When we look at the electronic medical record system of today, it is completely the Wild West of information. Disruptive technologies coming onto the horizon. The system is the beast that protects the beast. And I know that we're always talking about patient centricity. I don't see it. And I think we're going to see a lot of them succeed and become blockbuster companies.
Hey everyone. This is our first episode of Digital Health Interviews in 2024. And we also are working on lots of new content in digital health, so I encourage you to subscribe to our channel and share with anyone who is interested in digital health space. And I'm even more excited about our today's episode. It's a special episode. This is the first time one of our previous guests comes back to our show, and I am privileged that this guest is Gil Bashe.
And I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this the second time.
Well, it's a first time because this is the first time you're doing it in person.
Yep.
And the last time, of course,
Yes.
we were together, you were home in Ukraine.
Yep.
And I was home at that point because we were in the midst of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally home in New Jersey, and we had an incredible conversation. And the show itself is phenomenal because you're not a bystander in the area of digital health. Obviously, here you are, you're chief operating officer of a major player, headquartered in Ukraine with offices in other places around the world. To me, it's incredibly touching that you've come here to New York for this in-person interview. I know that you and your family right now are really in the United States, literally as refugees from a horrible war that has been thrust upon the people of Ukraine from Russia. And so it's a privilege to welcome you here with an open heart and open hand and to discuss a topic that we are both passionate about, digital health.
Thank you very much. And to add to that, Gil was one of the people who, once the full invasion started, was one of the people who contacted me all the time, asking about myself, my family, and I really appreciate that.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I care deeply about you and all of our colleagues around the world who are trying to improve people's health. You know that after that conversation, I had the opportunity to go to Ukraine. I've been there many, many times, at least maybe 15 times, but the last few times that I've been there, of course, have been incredibly special because people have welcomed me at a time where there's great pressure. I'll say to your listeners and your friends and family that I have not forsaken people of Ukraine. I am actually going back again, and last week purchased my ticket, round-trip ticket. I'm hopeful, but my round-trip ticket. I'll be going to Ukraine. Obviously, my first stop is Moldova. I'll be stopping at Kishinev, and then making the crossing through, obviously, Odessa. There's a crossing there, and I'll be going up into the center toward Kiev. So I'm looking forward to that trip. I'm inspired by the people of Ukraine. I'm inspired by their entrepreneurial energy. I'm inspired by their desire to support each other. And I am inspired by the technological genius that is resident in the country, and you're an example of that.
Thank you again. I know it's hard to imagine that somebody in digital health still don't know who Gil Bashe is. It's really hard to imagine, but
I'm still trying to figure it out, though. So if they know, please tell me. Email me immediately.
But can you please remind me what you do right now? What's your main job?
Well, I have. That's a good question. What's my main job? Well, definitely my main job is the privilege of being chair of Global Health and Purpose at Fin Partners. And Fin is one of the world's largest independent communications organizations in the world. Mm-hmm. I have the privilege of working with 1,400 incredible people across 33 offises. The agency was the vision of Peter Fin, who recognized that the world needed and still needs, with our conversation about what's going on in your home, the world needs an agency with a heart and a conscience that every client could feel represents their best interests and their customers' best interests. So that's what I'm doing. Obviously, I've spent my my professional career being dedicated to the health and well-being of people around the world. And along with that, have taken on an additional role to champion our purpose and social impact practice, which is dealing with critical issues that deal with our collective well-being, the issues of climate, of embracing diversity, of dealing with the well-being of our environment, and of course the sustainability of the planet.
Looks like you're very busy, as always.
Yeah, and I have other sub-jobs that I do.
Right.
As you're probably why you asked the question. I'm also editor-in-chief of a digital health news platform called Medica with a K Life, medica.life. We have about, on an average year, about 300,000 readers. That would make it the size of a sizable, digital magazine, which it is. We have incredible authors from all around the world who are contributing content, ideas, opinions, what I'll call opinion-based research that they're orienting. And it's an incredible platform authored by physicians, psychologists, social workers, public health professionals, public health policy professionals, people passionate about our topic, digital health as well. So we cover the gamut. And the content is refreshed pretty much every day. So I have that. And then I'm privileged also to be on the boards of some startup companies and some very, very important public health not-for-profits.
Very impressive, very impressive. So our first interview, it went live in November of 2021, so a little over than 2 years ago. Apparently, it looks like we live in a different world since then. But if we're talking about digital health specifically, what would be your main takeaways from digital health over this past two years?
I think it is a very important inflection point right now. I think digital health is maturing. I think when we last talked, there was the enthusiasm, unbridled enthusiasm, exuberance about digital health, that it was kind of like the new exciting toy in the shop. And everybody was running to it. We had wearables, we had apps. COVID was forcing change in terms of how we register for our vaccine appointments, how we gain information. We didn't have this connectivity. It's so appropriate that we're in the same room together. But then during that time when we met, we were all isolated in our little huts.
Right.
And so digital was the way we connected with the world. Now, we also saw a tremendous amount of money pouring into the category. And people just said, I need to get a piece of that. It was almost like the early stage biotech revolution. People just pouring money in without thinking twice. And so when we see today the decline of about 32% reduction in some cases of investment in digital health, that's not a bad thing. People always say, oh, the category is failing. No, it's getting more sophisticated, it's maturing. People are pulling out the exuberance from the tossing of the capital, and they're looking at this from a due diligence standpoint. What innovations and ideas will give me return on investment for society and for the fund if you're in private equity? So I think that 32% or so drop in the capital since we last spoke, and we spoke subsequent to that, but since that interview 2 years ago and today, 3 years ago and today, counting on that, is actually the sign of maturity of a category and the practical nature of the category. So we've gone from digital health can do just about everything, including replicating the milk on your Wheaties cereal, to what are the practical applications of improving the health system and the well-being of people through digital health. And I think they've been tremendous, and I think they've been proven. And I just want to touch on some pragmatic points for our listeners today. One aspect is the hottest thing that's sort of evolved, it's been renamed, is obviously called AI, which I call aggregated intelligence. Artificial intelligence, I think, is a misdirect. How can you have artificial intelligence? It's based upon data, organic data created by humanity, people, and it's put into a system and sorted for us to get aggregated insight. By the way, it's just really what big data was, plus machine learning equals AI. So we've been going through this evolution for about 15 years or so. This is not a new thing. It's really just let's now recognize what it is. We want to aggregate information. And by aggregating information, we can apply both human and machine pattern recognition. Through the pattern recognition, we can see certain public health problems and priorities. We can see the need for preventive care for people who have histories of risk within their genetic line, their family line, and we can sort of intervene potentially. We can see where we have hotspots of cost because we don't have enough care accessible to those people in a geographic area, and reconfigure our resource allocation. That's the wonderful aspect of digital health. Digital health is a very practical, life-saving, money-making platform for investors to consider. Due diligence is needed just like a biotech company, or just like if you're looking at a roll-up of golf courses, you've got to do your due diligence. The exuberance period has ended. Now it's back to business. So I think that's the big change since we last spoke in November 21.
Very interesting. You've mentioned, record low investment over the past 3 or 4 years. Lots of layoffs in this is in digital health companies as well. There also were a few large, pretty huge bankruptcies like Pear Therapeutics, Babylon Health.
So when we look at the sort of these behemoth sort of like folds, to some extent, what happened, and we could look at each one and analyze, but there's key learnings to come out of that. With Babylon, there's always going to be that tension between the Apple-like buzz and the practical delivery of services. And so the concept of ChatGPT, which Babylon offered, or the use of AI, the sense of looking at the globality of the thing, what started to happen is that was taken over by individual health provider system behemoths. So if you look at ChatGPT or telehealth, and you look at that, well, you certainly have great players like in this city, NYU Langone created that also. And so did Weill Cornell, and so did Northwell, and so did all the systems of note around the world. And so it wasn't that Babylon Health failed and therefore what it offered failed. It's actually, it was dismediated by the actual health system. Babylon Health was perceived, particularly in this big market, it was perceived as sort of an unnecessary step when you really just wanted to get access to a health professional in a system. So it was a step toward a step that was eliminated. But the steps are rooted now in the health provider system. So that's one insight. Pear Therapeutics, different insight. The promise of digital health and managing disease, I don't think we want to question that. I think what was needed, though, was we're talking about people's lives and their well-being. What was missing was an abundance of clinical evidence. Once we start to talk about digital therapeutics, we have to remember it's about the therapeutic side of this, not just the gee whiz of the digital. And so when you're saying this digital therapeutics will deal with smoking cessation or your mental health needs or something like that, you need to show the data for that because we have a payer-based system for reimbursement. And you also have doctors who prescribe medications to intervene on smoking, deal with mental health needs. So they have to choose at times a digital therapeutic application or a medicine, tablet, capsule, injectable, where I have read an abundance of peer-reviewed data and seen thousands of patients in a clinical trial versus a 510(k) approval where I had maybe 500 patients that studied this in almost like a controlled trial, but not a placebo-based trial. There are new players today that have come on board that are dealing with digital therapeutics, and they're treating themselves much like biotech companies. They recognize they need to have well-designed clinical trials of magnitude, publish data, and submit that published data as part of their application for approval. And that doctors are making decisions not just in terms of a pill versus an app, so to speak. I'm simplifying it. They're actually saying, I really want to cure this person and address their smoking issue or their mental health issue or their other issue. And it's not this or that. It might be, in fact, concomitant care, this and that. And so I think digital therapeutics with the Pear thing just morphed in a different direction. And Pear had already established its voice. And that was it. The last one was all of AI. I know that was on the tip of your tongue. This big company, it looked like a high flyer. Everybody sort of said, wow. And it had the AI to boot, which is the hot thing today, right? Practical application. Practical application. And I think that the new companies that are coming on board that are using AI, ChatGPT, and Gen AI, they're deploying it for the markets very practical, pragmatic reasons. And I think we're going to see a lot of them succeed and become blockbuster companies.
I'm looking forward to it. Actually, it was interesting to listen to. I asked you to give some predictions for the upcoming 2022 back then.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. You mentioned health information technology will blossom, artificial intelligence in healthcare. You always knew, I guess. And the last one was developing post-acute care programming.
Boy, I could be a futurist.
Yeah, I know.
Holy mackerel. So, I mean, there was a reason why I sort of stated those three. Look, the sense of health information, which also includes AI, right? And also includes post-acute care. So they're not separate. They're actually not separate concepts. When we look at medicine historically, the genesis of modern medicine was based upon observation. People who were deemed healers or actually graduated from some form of medical school then, their skill of the great physician was based upon their ability to aggregate information in their heads, right? We didn't have the ability to aggregate it or computate it earlier. And they had amazing cognitive ability. And they had intuitively incredible pattern recognition skills, intuitively. And those people became the great physicians of the 1970s and 80s even, of this period of time. Why? Because they had incredible memories, computer-like storage. They saw patterns, machine learning in their noggins, and they had the ability to sort through the important from the relevant as they saw the case. And so those people really became the iconic physicians of our time. They were, in fact, AI and Gen AI embodied in organic form. That's not changed. That's what people seem to say. They say that medicine's being disruptive. No, it's not. It's just evolving from the individual brilliant stage to the community brilliant stage. Now, we're still in a new stage. Physicians who reject their merging with technology and physicians who realize that technology augments their skills. So when I think of, let's say, VR, everybody will say virtual reality, right? I say, no. I have a headset. I play with it. No, from an intellectual standpoint, I'm in that image that I see. I'm in that 3D experience. It's an extension of my reality. And I think that, let's say, the great surgeons of our time, let's say Raphael Grossman or Shafi and people like that, who are really at the cutting edge of using these technologies, they probably would not say it's virtual reality. They would probably say it's just an extension of my skill set. My physicality didn't allow me to go in this direction or this direction inside the human body. But when I combine me with a technological advancement, I can go anywhere my imagination believes that my skill could take me. So when I made those predictions, it wasn't like I was just pulling them out of a hat and you were saying, well, like 2 years later or so, you're saying, wow, this guy's a futurist. No, I'm actually historic in my vision of the sort of the momentum of the universe. And so hospitals sit on vast amounts of data that they do absolutely nothing with. And so when I look at undiagnosed diseases or rare diseases or difficult to treat people or people who have risk factors that we really need to intervene and find more convenient ways to do that, when I look at all of the potential of medicine to heal, I say to myself, unleashing that potential will require us actually to organize information. But we're in the stage of chaos right now. We're in the era of complete chaos. And what's that? With no finger pointing. When we look at the electronic medical record system of today, it is completely the Wild West of information. It is compartmentalized. It has no chronological flow. We're using different language and terms based on the health professionals who are inputting. Many doctors are just inputting what the last person inputted. So what we're finding is we actually do need machine tools to actually begin to sort patterns from that sort of like chaotic mass of stuff. So I'm thrilled that I was on point with my prognoses, but I have to say it's because I am a sort of a student of history.
Well, I kind of have to ask you to give some predictions for this 2024 now.
Oh boy. When you're right like 100% of the time, you always are on the risk of blowing it. No. So I will though give some predictions, and I think they're very important predictions. One prediction I have is I believe we're going to see disruptive technologies in the use of real-world evidence that leads us to recognize that the patient, the person who has the concern, which the system is really built around, actually has a very critical seat at the table. And I know that we're always talking about patient centricity. I don't see it. I actually do not see it. I think that the patient is not at the center of the system. I think the system is at the center of the system. The system is the beast that protects the beast. And I think that what's going to happen is we're going to start to understand that it's not that patients are not test tubes, and clinical research is not comparing one test tube to another test tube. We have to get into the real world evidence business. And I think that there are some disruptive technologies, and I say that, I use that word purposefully, disruptive technologies coming onto the horizon, because the status quo of what we've done right now isn't optimal. It's not working for the patient. It's not working for the health professionals. It's not working for the people who pay the bills. So we've got to come to grips with the fact that the system is broken and we're operating comfortably within that fragmentation. We have to find a way to make it work better for the system and therefore better for the patient. I will give an example of someone to watch. They're on my watch list. There's a company in Israel called Stuff That Works. And Stuff That Works was created as an outgrowth of people who were the leaders of Waze, which disrupted navigation around the world, transportation around the world. I use it in Ukraine, by the way, all the time. It's fantastic. And it actually speaks to me in Ukrainian. So when I come back to the States, I have to remember to switch it over, or people in my car wonder what's going on here. But Waze disrupted the whole GPS-related system. Many of us used to have little machines on our dashboard that fell off. Waze brought it onto our phone with the use of the downloadable app, reinvented the map, and didn't put the map at the center of the conversation. It put you in your travel at the center. You're going in a direction, traffic's building up, don't go that way, go this way. You, in essence, the patient, suddenly became the center of the journey. Health needs that. They've created this company called Stuff That Works. They're using Waze-based technology actually to put the patient at the center of the health question. And I think that they're an enterprise to watch because the system needs disruption. Now, I don't know if they'll be the blockbuster that Waze was, but I think they're going to create a lot of conversation. So that's one aspect, that technology will shift the patient more toward the center of the engagement of the system. So that's one aspect. I do think that Gen AI will find it harmony with the health professional. I think that the conversation to date has been physician versus AI, and that some physicians are resistant to the technology. Some surgeons are resistant to robotics, but the best surgeons actually are masters of robotics. They realize they're in harmony with the technology. Same thing here. I think you're going to see a lot of physicians realize it's not this or that, it's this and that. So I think we're going to see a cultural shift in medicine, where AI is actually going to be a counter colleague to the health professional. I will tell a personal story. Since we last met, my father-in-law, a great physician who had great pattern recognition skills, died at 97. And I was in the hospital with him one of his last few days. The nurse asked a question, and I said to her, that information actually is in his electronic medical record. And she said something that I think is telling of why your work, Alex, is so critical. She said, I don't have time to read his electronic medical record. Because what's happening right now, we don't realize operationally, is that the nursing and physician staff on the floor change every few days. So you have your doctor who pops in and provides that 30,000-foot oversight, but your moment-to-moment care is dependent upon people who really are just not there consistently. We need the information systems to work because these people want to do well by people, and they need this. So what I think is going to happen is AI, Gen AI, ChatGPT is going to operationalize within the health system. It's going to focus away from wow, gee whiz, to pragmatic application of technologies embedded within the health system terminals. So I think that's going to be another, what I'll call operational change that's going to happen. So one is disruptive technologies will actually start to shift our perspective of the merger between people and technology. The second thing is what I'll call is technology is going to take over and make information more accessible to the health professional. The third aspect I'm going to stick with, I said it was going to change. I think that we're going to make huge advances in both post-operative or post-institutional care, step-down care. That's going to be highly mechanized or techified. And I think also what I'll call healing at home, aging at home, is going to be supported by technology, where people are worried about people who are elderly or ill and they're at home. Technology is going to bring confidence to that process, both to the person who's at home and to the caregiver sort of enterprise. We already have this. We have to recognize this. This is not a strange concept.
Right.
I'm talking about fusing it through. The reason I'm saying it's not a strange concept is, well, one aspect is for people who had arrhythmia, irregular heartbeats, and they were being checked. Once upon a time, you put on a Holter monitor for 2 weeks, and it collected data, and you gave it back to the doctor. Now, technology, not developed also in the United States, actually developed in Eastern Europe and Israel. There's the MCAT patch. Little patch you put on your chest. You can shower, you can play tennis, do whatever you want. Tiny little patch. It's transmitting data to a station so that they can see if you need help or not. So wearables are really going to empower people. Obviously, if you have an Apple Watch, I don't know if you have an Apple Watch. Here we go. You have Pear watches. But if you have an Apple Watch and you stumble or fall, it asks you now, did you fall? Are you all right? And you have a certain amount of time to put it all. That's going to also enable people who are fall risks to have some sense of someone's going to come and rescue me. So we've had that technology forever. It's just going to become more and more part and parcel of the aging and caring at home process. So those are my three predictions. Disruptive technologies will disrupt. Two, harmony between technology and humanity, and humanity welcoming it to perform better for humanity. And three, I think we're going to see less focus on the hospital system, more focused on where we want to grow old and be within our communities.
I love that. How about we meet in 2 or 3 years and compare the results?
First of all, I'd love to do that regardless, either here in the States or in Ukraine. But for certain, I'd love to do this again in Ukraine at a coffee shop somewhere. That would be very cool.
I agree.
Obviously. But now I'm going to be worried for 2 years. I had a 100% track record of the first interview. Now I'm going to be judged now on these. Like, hey, you scored the first time. Now you're a buffoon. I hope that's not the case. We're going to find out soon.
Yeah, we will. I think you mentioned once that you also do private investment as an angel investor. I'm going to suggest to play a small game with me.
Okay.
So let's imagine that your assistant, for instance, comes to you and shows you 2 pitch decks. You don't really have time to go through the whole pitch deck. You have to choose one just by the topic of the startup that you see. And I'll give you 2, and then I'm gonna go to the next one, and you have to choose either you're gonna stick with the previous one that you chose, or you're gonna choose a new one.
Let's go for it.
So the first 2, a new mental health app to fight anxiety and depression, or AR application to educate students of medical colleges.
Well, not having a chance to go through the decks and looking at the market size or the proof points or so forth, I think that the mental health sector, without some really new disruption, is saturated. It's going to have to be pretty darn special in order to have breakthrough possibility from an return on investment standpoint. Right. I'm going to go with the latter.
All right. So AR application for students, or a new digital stethoscope with AI tool to analyze the breathing sound.
So I'm going to stick with my current decision. The reason is, while I think the stethoscope has to be reinvented, and should be reinvented, and has been reinvented. And I think it's a dramatic cultural change for physicians who have used the stethoscope around their neck as almost like a badge of status. They've been asked to give that away for a small little sort of like coin-sized tool that fits on the chest that they can look at on their phone and see what's going on. So essentially the stethoscope has evolved both into the sonar of the heart function, but also the ultrasound of the heart function. I think it's been sort of looked at already, and I think that the people who are going to jump in on that are actually not going to be the big stethoscope companies. I think the people who are really going to dominate or swoop in, believe it or not, are Siemens, Philips, Medtronic, Boston Scientific. They're going to buy the best of that technology up and scale it up. So I'm going to stick with my first choice.
Okay, understood. So AR application for students, or a new health app designed for the prevention of diseases with recommendations on how to lead a healthy lifestyle using gamification.
So gamification is a big hot area. If you had said to me on the first one, gamification and mental health, I would have been very interested in the possibility. Gamification, particularly in the Gen Z component, I would really have to take a look at the target audience. But if the target audience is 30 and under, I'm getting very, very interested in gamification. It is an audience that has been brought up on games since childhood. They get it. It also, in terms of group therapy, I think gamification is the way to go. It allows people to interact with each other, and through how they deal with the game itself, they actually are seeing their behavior pattern, frustration pattern, graciousness pattern, anger. All of that is playing through for gamification. Now you have me stumped a little bit. I think that the gamification in mental health is a bigger market.
But this is prevention.
Prevention.
Yeah.
I'm going to say I'm going to stick with my original investment.
Cool. All right. Getting harder, I think, now. So, AR application for students or AI agent developed to schedule an appointment with a doctor by just giving your symptoms and access to a Google Calendar and location.
Wow. That's a very practical, helpful situation. If the doctor or their office or this provider has bought into this, it's being launched by way of the provider system. I could see people, consumers, saying hallelujah. Now, if it's cross-system application, you could use it for any sort of like symptom or medical condition or doctor or hospital system. Count me in.
All right. All right. So now AI agent or decentralized clinical trials platform to digitize the whole process of a trial for the patient.
Well, that's the holy grail, right? The way we do drug development now is just unacceptable. It's lengthy, it's expensive. We only get a very small percentage of the patients who should be enrolled in a trial. We don't get the diversity we need. We've almost shut out rural America in this country from the process, and we shouldn't. Decentralized trials would allow us to open all that up. If it's a robust system, if I could see quickly in a glance of a slide or two, I might head in that direction.
Okay. Couple more. So decentralized clinical trials platform or telehealth solution with multiple integrations with remote patient monitoring tools.
Crowded area. I think that there's some great companies in there already. People don't realize companies like Teladoc, I think that they're already handling like 4 out of every 5 telemedicine calls, either like under their own brand or white labeled for other systems. That's a multi-billion-dollar business. They can block out competition. I'm not going to go there.
Okay, makes sense. The last one, so we have decentralized clinical trials platform or AI solution to help a patient select medical insurance provider that fits best his or her needs.
Decentralized clinical trial platform, hands down. The reason is that in this country, about 46% of people who are insured get their insurance by way of their employer. They have absolutely no choice in the decision. The other group buy it on the open market, usually one of the ACA affordable care models and so forth. It depends on where you live, what state you live and so forth. There's actually limited choice depending on what your economic variable is. If you're on the lower end of the economic scale and buying in, you're effectively buying not much more than Medicaid. So I think that's harder. I think though that for my generation, when they're starting to look at Medicare, in terms of the drugs you might be taking, the type of physicians you're seeing, a lot of people are hiring consultants because it's so complex. I think if you can bring that to an AI platform, that's a very cool idea. How do you monetize it? That's the hard part. On decentralized clinical trials, the platform, you're not monetizing it, but you're creating efficiencies of the system. So you're not monetizing, you are reducing your cost burden and maybe even your submission speed to enhance patent life of the product. I could see people sort of putting economic models to that, like a meta-analysis to that platform in order to make money. On the choosing of health insurance, you've got to really bring it down to the people who are buying on the open market, what age group they are. That's a harder nut.
Okay, decentralized clinical trials.
I think our listeners today have gotten sort of sort of a brief snippet of Gil's thinking processes.
I tried my best to do that, to find that out.
I'm put on the spot, but I'm good with it.
All right. So finally, traditionally in the end, I ask my guests to give some kind of recommendations to digital health startup founders. Any tips or advice?
I definitely do. I have a few tips. I want to give 3 very important tips.
Please.
I think that people often look at raising capital as like, I've got to go out and raise capital. And I would say that's like, in my 3 recommendations, that's number 4. Shockingly, you've got to live. I understand that. I've been an entrepreneur many times. You've got to be able to put food on the table. Number 1, understand the market you're entering, the business model, and the reimbursement model. Who's going to pay for this? I meet tons of really well-intended startup entrepreneurs who have what they feel is a big idea, but they don't realize that the system doesn't want to pay for that. So you really have to understand the business model. That's job number 1. Number 2, it's your sense of brand identity. And I'm not just talking about communications. I'm actually talking about where you're rooted. A lot of people sort of say when they have number 1 handled, I'm going to run right away and get money. I actually recommend taking an interim step. Incubators, accelerators are part of the chain. If you have an idea that's targeting physicians or health systems, look at what health systems have incubators. Get into an incubator. That incubator is like what college did you go to, so to speak? What alumni system do they have? And so a lot of the great schools or medical schools have either statewide or global incubators. That is definitely job number. Like Stanford has a global incubator. They have a branch, I think, in Haifa, at the Haifa Technion and so forth. Those amazing incubators. Sheba Medical Center has a global incubator. Northwell has an incubator. Mm-hmm. I think Mount Sinai Cedar Sinai has an incubator. Get into an incubator because they have alumni systems. They have a built-in sort of like operation for you actually to deploy your idea and do pilots. That's next. Along with that, you can get people on your advisory board from that process who are worldwide top-notch. So that would be number 2.
Okay.
And number 3, build out a presentation deck that addresses what the market needs to see. They need to understand what's the return on investment, what's your business model, who has validated this, who are your advisors, what's your operational plan to bring the idea to fruition, where do you want to put the money? Not just that you want money, what specifically do you need the money for? All of that has to be thought out. And then what an investor wants to know is, what's your thoughts about exit models? You may say, everybody wants to say, I want to build this, I want to bring it into market and so forth. The chances of you actually bringing it into market and being successful are, well, questionable. So I think that you want to take a look at, say, who's going to need this embedded in their system? Or who would want to take it out if it's perfected and proven? What big company is going to come in? Google wanted Waze, right? They wanted it so much they paid $1 billion for it. It was a disruptive technology. You have to look and say, who's going to pay me real money? I'm not speaking to them yet, but who would want this so much because it's akin to their portfolio or a threat to their portfolio? I would need to see that. So those are my 1, 2, and 3 steps.
That's amazing and very super useful. Thanks.
Always. Look, and by the way, for the listeners who want to ping me, I mean, one of the great aspects of your platform, of the show itself, is you invite entrepreneurs to listen in and access the guests. So absolutely, you can find me by way of X, formerly known as Twitter, or LinkedIn, or Threads. Those are the best ways, I think, to reach me.
There you go. We'll definitely add links in the description of this video. So thank you so much, Gil. It was a pleasure again. And finally,
I get to do this in real life and shake your hand.
Yes.
It is an honor. You're one of the great treasures of our industry. And I know that you'll be traveling around in the States a little bit this year, attending some of the big digital health meetings. Right. So I'm looking forward to greeting you again and again and welcoming you and introducing you to the whole community here in the United States that knows you virtually, but it's about time they get to see you in the flesh.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.